Hello, guys and dolls. Welcome back to Southern Belle Humanism and Happy New Year. So, I'm really happy to be starting a new season of Southern Belle Humanism with a friend of mine who is a very talented musician and artist. His name is David Lanier of Munook. And Munook, I would describe it as a band that is folk electronica. And I think that's fascinating considering the South is kind of a birthplace for folk music. And you have this unique 21st century spin. Of course, that's just my category. So let's hear from David about what Munook really is to him and how he came up with that name. Hey, David, welcome.
Hi, and hi, everyone watching. This is really cool. Thank you for asking me to do this. I really like it.
Oh, you're very
welcome. The name Munook, it really doesn't have a deep, how much time you got? I never explain it to people because the story is ridiculous and I'm very wordy. So here we go. I had a group of friends that I played music with for a long time, and the band dissolved when I was about 21, 22 years old because we just changed as people. But it was a real nasty breakup. I always joke around and say playing music with people is about the closest thing you can get to making out with somebody. So the bond there was really powerful. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but it really was. And so I had a dog that was named Aurora, and it was just this little puppy I had. And on the annual spring break trip that the band always took, I couldn't go because I actually had a job. And so they took my dog instead. So in a stoned stupor, they changed the dog's name to Munook. And when they came back home, and the reason why they changed it to Munook is even a longer story, but they changed the dog's name to Munook. So I came back home, or they came back home with the dog, and it no longer responded to me anymore. And it was just kind of the needle that broke the camel's back. And that was like all these years, like 10 years of friendship and playing music and all the stuff just collapsed around this little dog. And so eventually the dog ran away while they were watching it, while I was at work. And shortly afterward, everything just kind of fell apart. And I knew I wanted to keep playing music. And at the time I was like, well, I'm going to name it Munook because the dog's name is Aurora. And I'll show you guys. So I named it Munook. So it started out as like this cynical kind of snide thing. But, you know, we have mended our friendship since then. And things are better between all of us, thankfully.
They took your dog. They basically stole your dog.
Well, there was just so much. Everyone was so high. It seemed like a good idea to them at the time, and I was against it. But yeah, they took the dog to the beach, and anyway, changed the dog's name, and it was just kind of like this little weird focal point. So that's what I called the music project after that happened. You know, because I was still in my early 20s, and when you're in your early 20s, you're kind of like, I'm gonna tell everybody what I feel and think. And but now I've just stuck with it because that's what it was, and I kept it like that. So I've since looked into the etymology of it, and it's actually linked to Inuit, Alaskan native kind of thing. So I like it. It's cool. But that's where that came from. So sorry that took so long.
So what sort, we talked a little bit before we actually did a live, I pushed the live button, about how you categorize your music, and you don't really have a category for it. It's just whatever your listeners kind of place it, and explain how that feels as an artist to sort of be open to interpretation. That seems like it'd be very raw. Is that the right word to use? Just putting yourself out there and letting people put you in a genre.
Yeah, it feels fine. I've always been okay with being weird. I've always been weird. So that's what, you know, music is art to me. So it's like a direct representation of who you are inside. And and it can't really be categorized, I think, which I know is like a very pretentious thing to say, but I don't think it can be categorized. So I don't really, I think a lot of the times when you write music from a business standpoint, people want you to say, well, what demographic are you appealing to? Because if you're going to appeal to this demographic, you need to be this, and so on and so forth. But I just kind of never wanted to do that. So personally, I was one of my biggest influences, I think, would be Bjork. Bjork.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes.
As you pronounce her name correctly. And she was one of the first people where I was just like, oh, wow, she's just all over the place, like pulling in string arrangements and electronics and, you know, choirs and horn sections. She's just all over the place. So I liked that idea. And so I kind of tried to implement that idea into what instruments I was familiar with using, which is guitars and pianos, and kind of using what I had. So, you know, I think in 2018, that's really kind of become a commonplace, is to just kind of be collaborating with multiple artists and be drawing from multiple genres and things like that. So I'm okay with it.
I think that's great, because gosh, you open yourself up to doing so much, just not in the music world, but, you know, you segue into film, video games, and all those other like forms of media. And when you can be really versatile like that, you've always been into music, right? Like, when did this, a little bit of where your personal bio meets your love for music, and how you as a child, what made you want to take this path in life?
I think my parents, you know, I really love and respect my parents. And at the time, they, you know, my mother's an educator. She's very intelligent. My dad's an entrepreneur, so he's always worked very hard. And they really wanted me to be smart. And so when I was very young, they got me into music just because that was something that was going to help my brain. And so they kind of introduced me to music. So at like 7 or 8 years old, I started studying piano and performing in recitals and things like that. And then that evolved, and I would play keyboard at home. And then I became a teenager and I heard rock music. You know, I was like, ooh, that's what I want to do. And they were like, no, that's not what you're going to do. I was like, I want a guitar. So they were like, okay, we'll get you a guitar. And they got me a classical guitar.
Oh, right.
I was like, what am I supposed, is this furniture? What am I supposed to do with this? Rock out on this.
Yeah.
But I had to learn on classical guitar, which I think shaped my playing now. And then it just kind of progressed. And then in high school, I kind of got into the rock band thing. I finally got my hands on an electric guitar, and I was in a band for a long time. And then band split up and I was by myself, but I still wanted to do music. And that's when I got introduced to Bjork. And I was like, oh, she's like the female Trent Reznor, where she does like 80% of everything.
Wow.
On her own. And then she'll hire people along the way. And so that got me into electronics, and then I kind of meshed the analog with the digital.
Yeah, because this is mostly you. It's mostly just a one-man show, and you bring in other people. Yeah. So in your first album, In and Of It, right? That's In and Of It. I want to say In and Out of It, but it's In and Of It.
I'm in and out of it a lot.
That I got that album, and I was actually listening to it this past week, getting ready for the whole podcast thing. And two songs that really stand out to me on the album, Token and The Dreamer.
Oh, cool.
So, and it's interesting, especially all that's going on out there in the internet ether, you know, when we talk about women and sexuality and perception and the way that we treat each other, and having self-respect and having body image and all these issues that make you susceptible to maybe making bad decisions or getting in bad situations. And it's like you wrote this beautiful piece for your daughter or daughters. Yeah. And expand on that, because that was really, really sweet to hear that the first time that I ever heard it, when I bought the album. But then listening to it again recently and taking it from when it came out 2012 to 2018, January 2018, it's interesting to hear that song at different times.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really neat that you like that song, because that overwhelmingly is one of like the least favorite songs, I think, when the general audience listens to it. Like, I can look at my stats and I can see what songs are selling, what songs are trending, what people are listening to, and that one always comes in lower. But the people who always like it are women and mothers and fathers who really care about their daughters. And that's the demographic for that song, which is fine. Because again, I'm not trying to appeal to a demographic. I'm just trying to be honest. And, you know, that song in particular, when Esther was being born, it was written for my daughter, Esther. And when she was being born, I actually was writing that song while Anna was in labor. So there was, you know, kind of this like spiritual channeling type of thing going on, where it was just what was coming through me. So it was just very sweet and very passive and very delicate and very simple little piece of music. And then lyrically, it was written, it was for Esther when she turns 18, 19 and starts getting into young adulthood and starts to worry about things and worry about the world and worry about how she's perceived and worry about, I don't know. I mean, everybody worries. And it was just kind of my message to her to, you'll be fine. And given the kind of person you are, you know, the things that you need in your life will gravitate towards you as long as you maintain the person you are, which is just this very sweet girl. And then on the flip side, it was me having to kind of deal with that future of like letting her go out into the world and not worry about her.
Right.
And, you know, she also has hypothyroidism, which she has no thyroid gland. And so that leads to some issues. And I didn't want her to feel insecure about those types of things, you know. And I try to raise my daughters, you know, on the point of that you made earlier. I try to raise all my daughters to be self-sufficient and proud and have a warrior's spirit, as silly as that sounds. But to really just be out there in the world and not be afraid of anything. So that was kind of my ode to that idea and to her, for sure. But I'm glad you like it. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's very sweet. And you're right, it is a very sweet song. And that's not something we get to hear a lot of today, just a sweetness, like a simple sweetness, where we're reminded that there are some good things about humanity.
Yeah.
So that's what made that really neat to me, and sentimental. The other one, The Dreamer, that one is so interesting because you have a line in there about you live in a fishbowl.
Yeah.
And then what is that line? That line, and then it segues into another line.
You've always lived in a fishbowl with all of your emotions in plain view. So I think it's time you got a grip and do whatever it is that you were born to do.
See, and that's interesting because of all your musics, that's the one line I think that maybe could have applied to me at some points in my life.
Well, I think
what's going on right now in my life? I heard that and I was like, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, it's a definitely interesting. It's an interesting little line. I think that one, I was, at the time when I wrote it and sang it, I was in my mid to late 20s. So I was super preachy, and it wasn't for me. It was for other people. It wasn't like on a soapbox kind of thing, but I was just trying to help people get through their problems. I think most of the lyrics were directed at people. And that one was just directed at the public at large. But then I went back and listened to it, and it actually brought a tear to my eye because there got to be this point in my own life where I was like, oh God, I can't even take my own advice. So, but yeah, that song is just about, you know, empowerment and moving out of the daydreaming phase and into the doing phase, where you say, okay, here's my ideas, and I've been thinking about these ideas, and now it's time to actually do it, and like, you know, and get a grip and actually act on your dreams and not just stare out the window and hope, which is what I do sometimes. I think most people do.
Yeah, and it's getting harder and harder to act on your dreams. You think it'd be easier today, but sometimes it's difficult, and we need some sort of motivation. And I think art always, in any form, whether it's music or literature, art can help motivate us. So I thought that was a neat message. And you're working on a new album, and of course I follow you on Instagram. How would you describe this album? How is it different than other music you've done? And how are you going to release it? Because I did ask a question, like, should I just release each song or should I do a whole album?
The album, I would say, is a lot darker. I think I got into this corner in my own life, just under a huge amount of stress and questioning myself and questioning my path in life. And it's got teeth on it. So I'm kind of excited about that because it's letting my voice kind of like come out a bit more. Mm-hmm. So it's less demure and it's more kind of like in your face, which I'm excited about because I think vocally a lot of the songs I'm just really out there at the top of my range, and I hope I can hit the notes. But anyway, so it's going to have 11 songs on it, and overwhelmingly it is more aggressive. It does have some of the lighter touches. Mm-hmm. There's some real pretty songs on there, but overwhelmingly it's a bit more assertive, as it were. And then as far as the release of it, and your husband might find this interesting. It's the name of the album is going to be The Black Hole Singularity.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's cool.
Because I just kind of was thinking like, and a lot of the lyric themes are coming from occult information and things that I've been reading. Not that I necessarily am sold on it and believe it 100%, but I find it interesting enough to share what I've learned. Mm-hmm. But I called it The Black Hole Singularity because I was like, that's the one thing left that we can't quantize quite yet. We don't have a machine or anything that we can stick in there. But as far as the release of the album, I do think I'm going to try to get on with the future of music, which is, unfortunately, people don't really have the time or the attention span to listen to an album anymore. So I think I'm going to release one song at a time, and each song is going to have a video and, photo shoot and a remix or whatever, treat each song like an album. And then once all the songs are out, then release a vinyl or a digital download. But I think I'm not going to do any CDs at all because I personally haven't bought a CD in a decade. And I just don't think people do that anymore. So I don't want to spend the money on it. So I think it's just going to be digital and vinyl.
Yeah, I can understand that. CDs, they are cool, but you're right. No one buys them. I think I actually did buy a CD last year. You're gonna laugh. I bought Lana Del Rey's CD, but because I wanted to be the first one to actually get the CD here and play it. I thought that, I just wanted to listen to it on.
Is it good? I have not heard it yet.
It is good. It is good. She's gotten quite popular. She used not to be, but good for her. I hope she's more prolific. She's been quite prolific anyway. But but vinyl is really cool that you're going to do vinyl because nothing sounds like vinyl.
No, and it's apparently real popular. Well, not apparently. I know it's real popular with the millennial hipsters.
Right. Yeah, I even have one right up here.
Hey,
and I have two of my grandmother's antique ones.
Really?
Ryan's going to refinish. He's going to try to redo because they're kind of messed up electronically inside and all that mechanically. Nice. So we'll have 3 by the end of it.
Hey.
So but you have a unique perspective that a lot of maybe present day artists do not have, because you're a dedicated husband and a father, and you and Anna have been together for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And how does that give you just a unique perspective, just a different take on everything, and adds value and quality to your music, in my opinion? But what's your take on that?
I think it just cuts the crap out You know, Anna doesn't put up with a lot of bull crap. And, you know, I think musicians have a tendency, being such free spirits, to involve themselves in things that aren't, you know, very productive. So it's nice to have a woman around that inspires you and encourages you to stay productive and to stay active and to really work on that, as well as the kids, you know, because I always think, like, when I die, I want my kids to be able to look at my body of work and be proud of that, and not, I don't know. So that definitely plays a role as far as how I'll be remembered, or how my family, my children, will think of me in the future. And I think, you know, as most musicians, like younger ones that I see on Instagram and Twitter or whatever, they're just, you know, they're playing a bit too much, and they're not working enough. And I think, if, you know, work beats genius a lot. So even if you're not that talented, if you just work hard and really try to network and get your stuff out there, good things will start happening. And I don't know. So I think kids and a wife definitely puts it into a treat it like a job mode, and not like treat it like me and my bros are going to the place. And it's like, okay. I mean, that's cool. People want to do that.
Right. Yeah.
I can't get away with that. I've tried. It doesn't work.
And that's what's so not appealing about a lot of the music scene anyway, you know, is that they do sort of have that lifestyle that's rather, it's hard to see how they could be a consistent person. So I think that the more successful you are would depend on how, like you said, how professional you can be, how you treat it like a job. So that makes a lot of sense. And I can see how being a family person, as I am one myself, really grounds you. It does bring a certain sort of a grounding force, like an anchor in life. Yeah. So, and that's a good feeling. And also, talking about young musicians, just so everyone out there is clear, what age, what decade did you start actually making music in, and how, and we touched on this a little bit, but the changes that have gone from then to now, what's the cons, what's the pros, what are your thoughts on all that?
Well, I would say that I started doing music when I was 8, and then I did it all the way until I was 27, but I didn't take it seriously until I was about 27 or 28. And, you know, that's unfortunate, but that was just kind of the industry as I grew up. It was like you either had a record deal or you were playing in your basement, and there was no middle ground. So I had just kind of decided, like, I wasn't going to get a record deal because my music was weird and I lived in Alabama and that was impossible. So I didn't take it seriously. And I'd say that's the big difference between then and now, is like, it used to be, and you know this, like MTV, radio, magazines, or a friend. And that was how you discovered music, and that was it. And now it's like you have a production studio in your bedroom that most companies, most media companies didn't even, they wish they had 20 years ago. So, you know, kids these days in their early teens, their early 20s that are out there making music, like, there's no excuse not to be building a fan base, not to be performing. I mean, you can live stream a show, which I'm going to start doing, from your studio, and cast it to thousands of people and get paid, and not even have to leave the house and pay the hundreds of dollars it costs in gas and lodging and food to go play a gig. Right. So that
is very good.
The opportunities are enormous. The downside is that everybody with a guitar is suddenly a band. And so they kind of get in the way of people taking it seriously. And so it's like, so there's like a bottleneck effect now. So it's like millions and millions of people every year are putting out albums. And so it does crowd the system up a little bit. But like you said, there's so much music now that's, you know, they're singing about getting laid, making money, and doing drugs. and the stuff of substance, I think, is going to cut through all that in the long run. But
I really hope so. I really hope it does. I think the only time, like what you were talking about, singing about sex and drugs and all that, is when you're doing it from an older perspective, looking back on a youth.
Yeah.
I think it's the only time that that really works.
Yeah.
You know, if
that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I think singing about it in the midst of it is kind of like incoherent, to say the least. And that's me being very nice about it. But so when I hear all these younger artists, like independent online, and they're singing about what they're doing right now or last night or whatnot, it's like, okay.
Yeah. It's not for me.
Yeah. It's like, why don't you just read your journal page, you know, online for everybody?
Yeah.
So that's very odd to me.
Music has become a social media update.
It really has. I say, like, everything in life has become a social media update. It's crazy, and everyone gets into everyone else's business. So it's really is a double-edged sword. And I feel,
and that's why I'm sorry, you said earlier that it's hard to act on your dreams, and I think that's why what you just said is because everybody's watching and up in your business.
yeah, and it's like the internet. There's no civility. It's if they were to treat certain like sites like private. I'm not talking about public forums that are basically the same thing as civic centers. Like if they were to treat everyone's personal private site like they would if they were in someone's house, and think of it that way, maybe their behavior would be different. I don't know. But it seems because people can't see a literal barrier or boundary, they think they can just say and do anything on anyone's like personal profile or site, whatever you're on, whether you're on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. So that as an artist, that must be very distressing. Like I can't imagine like being that out there, because here you are, you're selling. You're selling your artwork. Like it's sonically, it's, you know, it's sound. It's like sound with color. So I'm trying to describe it, and it must be. You must have to be a very strong person to withstand all of that comes with social media.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of negativity, and I mean, occasionally I'll get something like I had one girl say, "I can't understand a damn thing he's saying over all that racket." And it's just kind of like, I don't know, anybody's free to not like it. And yeah, you do have to kind of develop a resilience, like in whatever method. And so, yeah, it's tough for sure. You know, there's a lot of idiots out there, and now they've got a microphone.
Right. And talking about that is very true. And talking about, like, you were talking about millennials versus generational difference. And it's interesting because I was talking from someone from Canada last night on Skype, and she's a little bit older than us, maybe 10, 15 years. And she was talking about generational differences. And now you've brought it up with in the music world. And we're in a weird space, like our age group. And I've talked about this before, you know, back in the day, we were called the millennials because, especially my sister, you were going to graduate high school like she was. She's 5 years younger, or 4.5, in the year 2000. And then I graduated undergrad in 2001. So if you graduate at high school or college, you were called a millennial.
Yeah.
And then because you were at the tail end of what they called Gen X, and then they decided, no, we're not millennials, we're actually Gen Y.
Yeah.
And now our old millennials, but we have nothing in common. Like 10 years ago, we had a lot in common with people in our 20s, in their 20s, because now they're in their 30s. We have nothing in common with people in their 20s. These are people who have never lived in a world without social media, without the internet. You know, anyone born after 1995 they have no concept of a world without the internet. And that is kind of scary in a way. How do you deal with all that and the generational differences that are becoming so prevalent right now?
Well, it just came to mind. There's an Erykah Badu song that has a line in it that says, "What good do your words do if they can't understand you?" And I've always thought that was very profound as somebody who tries to be a lyricist. And with that in mind, I kind of view it like I am trying to learn how to evolve and communicate with them as best I can. And, you know, the phone is how they do it. So you have to learn that language, and you have to learn how they use it and communicate with it, and how their lives revolve around it, and that's how you reach them. But on the other end of it, you know, you have to understand that there's still a human being with a skull and guts and a brain and all the same emotions that we have, despite the generational gap. And you can still reach that and try to find it and see it and connect on that level, if that made any sense.
Yeah, it does. You're right. There is this screen, and even we keep it in front of us. I mainly for safety for me, but you know, we tend to. It's funny how each generation or each age group looks at that as a different thing. That phone, like fulfilling a different role in their lives, and you're right. Like that's the medium now. Is you know, it's the flashing screens. What inspires you as far as in life? I know you mentioned some musicians. You've talked about being a family man. What else? What else out there in the ether, in the cosmos, inspires you?
Oh man, that's a good question. I'm inspired by when I see people just doing their best and really putting themselves out there. That inspires me. I'm inspired a lot by nature. It sounds weird, but I love watching birds and seeing the freedom that's there. You know, as far as maybe external things that are tangible, like books and things, I'm inspired by philosophy, mainly, you know, Eastern, I would say. Zen philosophy. I read a lot of that. A lot of occult stuff. You know, I don't know. That's a tough question to give a very pointed answer to. Life in general, I don't know. It's just I'm gonna die one day. Death, you know, death inspires me. Just knowing that there's a clock ticking, and that I could die in a car accident on the way to the grocery store this afternoon because I got to go pick up some green beans, and I could die. And just knowing that makes me go like, well, let's not waste our time tonight, and let's make some good music that maybe will help somebody down the road, you know? So yeah.
What would you recommend to other artists who, they're sort of like going through a funk? You know, how artists, we always hear about the artistic temperament, and other than just, of course, being diligent and applying yourself, like how you kind of touched a little bit on how artists and musicians fall into a certain lifestyle. What would you recommend other than having a good support group like a family? How do you deal with that? Like, how do you deal with all the, I don't want to say, no, maybe I'll call it noise. How do you deal with like maybe the temptations, the noise, everything out there today in the world?
So you mean like as an artist, just how do you keep being an artist in a world that doesn't support it?
Right. In a world that doesn't support it or distracts it, or, you know, it seems that it would be very difficult today to be a musician. But in some ways, very easy, as you're saying. You know, you have a music studio right there at your fingertips.
Mm-hmm. You know, I guess you have to daily do something that is going to encourage you, and you have to daily remind yourself of whatever it is that you study or believe in, you know, to keep doing it. And I think if you can't do that, then you're probably in it for the wrong reasons, or you shouldn't be doing it. You know,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like if you can't justify it in your own mind, and it's really beating you down a lot, then you probably shouldn't be doing it, or you're in it for the wrong reasons. But you know, I mean, you just have to not care. You just have to not care. And it's hard to do, for sure. It's really hard, but I think you know, the right people who really believe in what they're doing will keep doing it, and the people who won't will just fall away, and you just keep plowing ahead, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely. And going back to your albums, your artwork on your albums, it's
Mhm.
very intriguing. It's very mystical in a very kind of monochromatic way.
Mhm.
And it's very, like you mentioned the word occult, it's very occult. It seems like you're into a lot of really cool things. And you've touched on the spirituality, and your artwork and your albums kind of go together very well. It kind of reminds me, oh God, what's the band? They were just in my brain. I'll think of them in a minute, but they're big in the 80s and 90s. You definitely have, you know, the artwork representing you well, and I've seen your t-shirts on Instagram. So where do you get your artwork from, and what inspires it? And tell me about that and how it kind of goes with the music.
The artwork, actually, interestingly enough, the first album was highly chaotic. I did not put any thought into aesthetics at all. I grabbed an instrument, I made a song, it was go, go, go. And then once I was 6 songs into it, I gave it to my brother-in-law, Daniel Willingham, who's a very talented artist. I would say he's more of a cartoonist.
Mm-hmm.
But I gave it to him. I said, listen to these 6 songs and just draw whatever comes to mind. And he was like, really? Whatever comes to mind? I was like, yeah, I want it to be inspired by the music. So that's probably why it feels so cohesive, because he listened to the music and drew what came to mind, which was this enormous UFO coming down over a city and disrupting it and destroying it and ruining it, while there was this girl sitting on a hillside watching it all happen, and she seemed to kind of be okay with all of it. And it was just kind of the dichotomy of, like, you know, industrious, you know, like Joni Mitchell's Big Yellow Taxi.
Right.
Pave paradise and put up a parking lot. So it's kind of that, but with the techie kind of darker edge to it of the UFO stuff. And so that's how that came about. And, you know, on the subject of UFOs and aliens, I'll throw this out there. I'm a believer. You know, and I won't get too deep into it, because I've kind of learned my lesson that you don't need to discuss it in too much detail. But that definitely plays a large role in my life, and a lot of the artwork was kind of derived from some of the things I was learning and reading at the time. And once he drew the UFO, I was like, all right, well, let's take this path. And the next song I wrote actually was about aliens. And so I would kind of draw these little concepts and send them to him, because I just doodle, but he's actually good. And he would flesh out the concept. So that's where it comes from. And I would suggest anybody listening to go look up the Ruwa, Zimbabwe case. Happened in 1994. Ruwa, Zimbabwe UFO encounter. And it was 62 school children had a really unique experience. And that's all I'll say on that.
Right. Yeah.
But they're out there.
Yeah, and yeah. We are very open-minded to that. You know, there's a lot of things that, you know, you hear about astronauts and their stories. If, you know, you talk to, you know, people who have been out, or people who have worked with people who have been out, and there's just a lot of unexplained things going around. And I don't know why you would call someone crazy for saying, yeah, there's something unexplained. There's something that unidentified. Yeah. It's not like you're putting you're definitely saying what it is.
Yeah.
You know, so it's I
think it's the pilots of the unidentified crafts that really throws the wrench, because something's operating them, and it's either us or it's something else. And if it's something else, then that opens a huge door to a black hole singularity of stuff you just don't know. But I will say the artwork for the next album, because part of my process, I wanted it to be constant change. And so I'm getting a new artist with new concepts and all this kind of stuff. And not that I'm leaving Daniel in the dust or anything. He does brilliant work, and the t-shirts are still available. But there'll be a new artist and a new producer and all this stuff. So hopefully the aesthetics are going to change. I got a a new photographer and everything. So hopefully it'll be really cool. It'll be very, very mystical and weird, but kind of off the alien tip a little bit and more into just deep thinking and mystery and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's Chris Robinson Brotherhood. That's who I was trying to recall.
Okay.
That if you look at their music and their artwork, it kind of their artist Alan Forbes, and he's phenomenal, and that's what I meant by, you know, you seem to pick out artwork that goes with the music. Also, the Flaming Lips. Am I recalling that right? I'm a big fan of the Flaming Lips.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't listened to them in like a few years though, honestly.
Yep. Weird stuff,
but
it's not a casual.
Yeah, I know,
listen.
right? No, it's not. And it's like when you listen, and this is what you were talking about, like albums kind of going extinct.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad that millennials don't, or I'm not going to call them millennials because I've heard they're called iGen. The young people in their 20s, like late teens, 20s. Yeah, iGen. Apparently that's the new marketing term for them. It's weird because of iPhone, iGen. Yeah. That's the 20 range now. Apparently, because they don't have, you know, they can't pay attention long enough for an entire album. They don't get that experience of listening to an album like you would watch a movie and seeing how each song, like someone like the Flaming Lips, where each song kind of, you know, there's a reason why it's put in that order.
Yeah.
And even a couple folk musicians tried to do that, like a Fine Frenzy. She tried to do that with one album, and I mean, they just completely just didn't get it. And I feel sorry for musicians because it's almost like that ability to create like a sonic movie has kind of been taken away, and maybe that's one of the cons now of
definitely. And that's why I say, even though I'm not going to release an album, it was created as an album. So there is cohesion in the set of songs that are coming out. And I think that that's something an artist should consider. But I can't dictate other people's actions. So if they want to put out a song a day that they're making by pushing a button on their laptop and rapping about the party they were at last night, then okay. But, you know, it is kind of sad that people don't. I used to like buy an album, put the headphones on, and spend a whole evening taking it in. And all my friends did too. And that just doesn't happen anymore. Sadly.
Right. That used to be a form of entertainment. And it wasn't that long ago, you know, where you would just do, I mean, I guess people do it now with records. Maybe that's where it's sort of, it's coming back maybe with vinyl.
Yeah.
It's interesting that to have that authentic experience, they're going like really old school, like 1970s old school.
Yeah.
So, and I think that if you keep a record in good condition, it holds like the music, that the sound better than something like, say, a CD, because I know CDs can't age. And I have some original John Denver that I'm a big John Denver fan. I have some original John Denver on vinyl back here behind me, and you know, and nothing really does sound like vinyl. So maybe they'll get that experience and of a like a sonic movie, and you know, through vinyl nowadays. But I don't know. Any other thing anything else you want to talk about as far as your music, your philosophy, current events, anything that you want to leave people with? Like what do you want to say?
If something to leave people with, you know, wow. Current events, the first thing that came to mind was Trump calling other countries shitholes. And I just think that's a terrible philosophy to have. And man, if you think that way, I feel sorry for you. So that's my view on current events. But you know, just to leave people with, I would say, you know, put your whole heart into what you do and remove distractions and hold on to the people in your life that love you, and make sure that they know that you love them, and, you know, be brave and be courageous, and don't be afraid of what other people think of you. Like you said, everybody's living their life with the camera in their face. and you can't be afraid of what other people think of you, and you know, just keep going forward like water off a duck's back, you know.
Yeah, that's how we're going to have to do it. We're really going to just have to shut out the noise, and it's hard when we are bombarded by so much noise. What sort of, other than of course your material, list all your albums available, and then what other sort of music would you recommend to build someone's, not just their music library, but their music intelligence? Like what sort of music, what sort of, from old, like, you know, centuries past to present day, would you recommend?
I would recommend the Beatles for songwriting creativity and recording creativity. I would recommend Mozart and Beethoven and Bach. And I know that's cliche, but there's a reason that music is still around and still being listened to. It's brilliant. I would say, you know, who else is really good? I don't know. I'm just a huge fan of Bjork. I think she doesn't get nearly the respect she deserves. Who else? I don't know. I mean, don't rely on laptops and computers, and just really like learn theory and learn songwriting and learn how to do your craft, and open your mind to genres of music, because you know, I think too often there's too many walls, everything's separated and divided up. So I think if you listen to death metal and you really get into that, open your mind up to listen to you know, something a bit more petite. You know, if you listen to very petite stuff, open your, you know, and just kind of experience the whole spectrum. And that's one way to really grow, is to not be a music snob musically, you know, I guess.
Speaking of music snobs, there were a lot in grad school. It's like, if it wasn't oh God, it was so disgusting.
Yeah.
But so what, list all your albums and where people can find your music?
Well, right now there's just one out. I have others, but that was pre-Munook, so we're not going to discuss that. That's in the ether. If you find it, congrats, but I don't condone it.
Okay, fair enough.
But Munook, oh yeah, there's some demos floating around out there that some old girlfriends have, and some old bandmates that shan't see the light of day. Munook, in and of it, it's munook.com on the website. You can actually buy the physical CD, or you can stream it on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, SoundCloud. Oh my goodness. I mean, it's on everything. If you live in South Africa, it's on scifi Africa, which I was very proud of. That was so cool.
I know, I saw that and I retweeted that. That's really awesome.
Yeah, I thought that was beautiful, especially on the heels of Trump calling it a shithole. I thought that was just so beautiful. But I mean, it's everywhere. Just Google it. It's MUNOOK, and you can pull it up and stream it. And I would be very grateful to anyone that did. Yeah, it's great.
And your Instagram now, you're doing a blog, a vlog on Instagram weekly, and you may want to give out your Instagram so people can find you on Instagram.
Yeah. Now on Instagram, that's a little tricky. The Munook is spelled with zeros, because there is a girl in Thailand who has the name Munook. It's like her middle name or last name, or it's some spam bot. I have no idea, but I can't use it. So Munook on Instagram has zeros in it. So it's MUN00K. We're going to work on getting that fixed. But yeah, I'm doing Wednesdays, I'm doing a live streaming, and I'm still working through that. And then Thursdays, I'm doing just like a 2-minute vlog that I'm posting to Twitter and Facebook. So again, it's all under Munook, except for Instagram.
Okay, and that's for Instagram. Okay, Instagram zeros in Munook. And for Facebook and Twitter, because I know a lot of people are on Twitter, give out your Twitter handle.
It's Munook, MUNOOK, twitter.com/Munook. Yeah.
Okay, that's easy, everybody. You should be able to find that. But I will have all these listed in the descriptions below, and where you can find David's music and links to interact with David. Anything else you want to say? Any now's your moment.
Okay, I would say thank you for being so kind and reaching out to me and asking me to do this. And I'm flattered, and I don't do well with cameras in my face, so I'm nervous. And
Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous.
I hope I haven't rambled on too much because I tend to do that. I might have.
No, you haven't. Not at all. Not at all.
So, but thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and for supporting me, and the flattering words on Twitter and all that stuff. It was very kind, and I'm very much appreciative. So thank you so much.
So you're very, very welcome. You are a very talented artist. I hope that you get the recognition that you deserve. And one more thing before we go, you are a Southern artist. And I forgot to ask this. How does that influence you, just being from the South, especially the heart of Dixie, Alabama?
Man, there's a lot of good musicians here, really good musicians, and they don't have any aspirations to put it out there, which is awesome to me. So it's really cool that you'll just go to some random social gathering and somebody's granddad or somebody's brother pulls out a guitar and just starts going to town on that thing, and you're like, holy cow. So Alabama actually has a lot of really good musicians, so it's very rich in the folk music culture, like you said, for sure. But other than that thing, man, you got to have it here, especially if you think the way I do, because you will get a lot of resistance, because it's either like, football, steak, potatoes, Republican, work. And that's like, that's it for a lot of people. So that is tough, but I think that things are changing, especially with social media. So there's a lot more people like ourselves that are kind of coming out of the woodwork and building communities, and I don't want to say fighting against that kind of thinking, but emerging as a part of the community that is respected and not looked at as like whatever.
Yes, things are changing slowly but surely, and with more people like you, hopefully they will change faster. Yep. So thank you so much, David, for being on. And this is David Lanier of Munook. Please check out his websites in the description below. And till next time, y'all, have a good day. Bye-bye.